Today we have Kevin Riedl from Austria, someone who started coding at the age of 13. I was literally just reading your profile, Kevin, and it's so cool and amazing. How you started off from Web 2, now you're diving into a space called Web 3, which again, some of us are still unaware of, can't trust fully, but you are someone who has made a name for himself. I recently saw your post on LinkedIn, and I think that's what got me super curious to talk to you. How are you teaching Web 3 and building smart contracts and NFTs to 11-year-olds? I think that's where I really was just like amazed. I was like, okay, wait, I need to talk to this man. How is he doing this? How did you get started? And now how are you helping other people get started? So that's all I want to know. Feel free to share more about, your journey. And yeah, I'm going to give it back to you.
Wow. First of all, thank you for that kind or great introduction. Really appreciate it to be here today. Thank you for having me. Yeah. Let's start with why I'm teaching kids. Basically, it's not my project. It's from Coding for Kids. That's an Austrian initiative that actually organizes coding sessions for free for kids between 10 and 15 years old. And yeah, usually it's they have a beginner's course and an advanced course. Beginners is around Scratch. I did that the last 2 years or 3 years, I'm not sure. And they also, since last year, I believe, have these advanced courses. Right? And since that I have my own blockchain company, I decided, hey, actually, it would be an interesting experiment to try to teach smart contracts to children, right? Because I haven't seen that before. I'm sure it's out there. Someone did it, right? But it's experienced developers are scared of smart contracts sometimes. So I thought that's gonna be fun, hopefully.
How is it going so far? How many is this like an ongoing course that anybody can access around the world, or is it just for Austrian kids in the local language and for particular schools? How does it work?
Yeah, it's actually just a local initiative. It's really in a physical room, 12, 13 kids, something around that. Yeah, basically it was just 1 week, right? It's always just 1 week course, which made it extra challenging because you just can't start developing smart contracts right away. You need to have some basic knowledge around wallets, what is blockchain at all, right? Because otherwise nothing what we would do that week would make sense.
Kevin, one question though, on that note, how do you explain blockchain or metaverse or NFTs or smart contracts to an 11-year-old? And honestly, I feel like a lot of us will benefit from this. So feel free to down to the common man here.
Yeah. I asked that myself as well. In general, I believe, or when I've thought back to my basically sessions when I listened to a teacher, the moments when I actually learned something and really listened to the teacher was when he was talking about experiences, when he was talking about like really doing amazing comparisons, like when he got emotional and all these kind of things. So I thought, or basically then tried to be as enthusiastic as possible, meaning that I really got into the class and just started talking about why does this crazy space exist at all, right? What is it all about? And I even talked about I would say money printing, because I think it was something many in there could relate to, right? Things got more expensive and so on. And basically, we really, first day, it was, I would say, 75% or 60% theory, which usually sounds very boring. But from what I observed was they really enjoyed it. They asked questions without an end, and we really loved, I think, a lot. And basically I just tried to wrap everything that I had to say around blockchain with a personal story, right? And I even talked about scams, right? I said, hey, a friend approached me a few months ago, lost 0.x Bitcoin for whatever reason, and things like that, right? And that's when everyone actually starts to listen, right?
Yep. I think those stories are actually very memorable, because even until today, like everybody talks about the pizza guy, who earned some Bitcoin like back in the day. So those stories really stay with you. People might still not understand Bitcoin or know what it is, but everybody sort of knows that story. But again, coming back, like stepping a little back from the story that about the course that you're doing, which is amazing. Honestly, I really hope one day it's accessible to everyone, all the kids around the world, and it becomes a part of normal traditional curriculum. Because I think it's a space that everybody needs to get involved in much earlier on in life, and it's a really good, field as well for kids to grow into in their childhood. But I would really love to know, how did you get started? So what is your background and how did you get involved in Web3? You are currently hosting a podcast of your own, also a co-host of 2 other podcasts, Decode and one more. And you have your own blockchain development company as well, where you now help other people as well as companies to get involved in the blockchain space. So I would love to know, how did you get started from a traditional background and now straight into this new world of a metaverse, and also pulling other people in, which I really like.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a great question, though. I basically, as you said, I don't want to bore anyone with my Web2 journey in general, but I just started out developing as usual with creating websites at the age of 13, right? Because that's one of the easiest things to do at that age.
Not really.
And
You're still, like saying that it's not the
in comparison,
Yes,
in comparison, sorry, I didn't want to trigger anyone here. But yeah, basically, I was always super curious about bleeding edge technologies. So I basically wasn't focused at all. I tried everything. I got my hands onto quantum computing on a super superficial level, a super high level. Yeah. And for sure, blockchain was also part of it, creating or developing compilers and things like that. So I just was curious, right? And tried out a lot of things. And at some point, I basically got approached by someone on LinkedIn, and we just met up. He asked me to basically join his blockchain startup at that time. It was, I think, 2017 or something like that. And it was a decentralized identity startup, right? Which is now popping up again with all that soulbound token hype, right? And I said no.
Okay.
Because I didn't really, some context. I had a startup at the same time and also had some experience regarding all that startup thing.
Right.
So I felt like there isn't that much there already, like a lot of, it didn't feel like that's going somewhere, right? So I said no. And funnily, I would say half a year later, a former friend of mine approached me and also said, hey, Kev, you need to join a blockchain startup.
Right.
I have someone here. And as you can imagine already, it was the same guy. And yeah, at that time, I just thought, okay, let's give it a shot. Interestingly, also that is what got me started, right? But interestingly, I just was there for, I think, 6-8 months, something like that. And yeah, then my original assumption basically strengthened. So I moved away from that, but since then I decided to actually focus on blockchain, and it really got me, I would say. Yeah.
Really nice. But how did you start off learning about blockchain? Like, did you have, let's say, a certain like time scheduled every day? Like, for example, I've seen people, and that's something that I'm trying as well, like put out 30 minutes every day just to learn about this new space. Because again, everybody has these like schedules and work, and like you, for example, have your own startup. So it's really hard to prioritize, right? So how did you go about prioritizing, doing what you were doing already, and then also learning how to get involved in this new space?
That's a super interesting question. I'm still dealing with that. It changed for me over time, right? It always depends on the context, right? I basically, sometimes, I just started some projects, right? I thought that would be cool without even having the background to do so. I just started and tried to go one step at a time towards that end product, right? Which for sure only works if you're a developer most of the time, right? Otherwise, you always have to be super serious and actually found a startup, right? But that was one approach. I did a lot, especially when I just started out with basically all technologies. And over time, for sure, reading book, as you said, half an hour, which is funnily the exact same period I had as well. Or at some point, it also just got part of my work, right? When I basically needed something, I had to look it up, and that suddenly happened every day, right? So I didn't have to actually put up 30 minutes every day, but still reading books and everything and hands-on experience, like really doing something in the space, talking with awesome people like you, for example, and discussing things all around Web3.
Awesome. And also would love to know, like, for example, you were always a developer, so you learned how to code, and that's been your passion for a very, very long time. Did you have any other skill set that you had to learn to get more into the blockchain space, or was it a continuation of what you already knew?
Yeah, as a blockchain developer, you have to be extra careful, right? You really have to start testing more if you didn't
Right.
beforehand, right? Because many developers and companies itself aren't really into tests, right? They just develop. Does it work? Yes. Doesn't it? Fix it, right? On blockchain, you can't most of the time, right? You have to make sure that it works right away to a large extent. Otherwise, you and your customers or company partners aren't happy, right?
True.
And even less the people using the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically test-driven development, really focusing on security, efficiency, performance-based programming, which also isn't the main focus of Web2 devs, right? Because you have the resources, storage is cheap, which isn't the case for blockchain, right? And all these kind of things, right? It's different, I would say. But in general, also requirements engineering and project management, right? Since you actually need to know what the customer wants and what has to be changeable, maybe what kind of parameters and so on, you really have to know what should be the end product, because as said, you can't change much afterwards. And that's an issue.
So now that you have your own company as well, right? Where, let's say, you have enough knowledge on how this new whole development works. You have enough projects under your belt that you've already worked on. You know what it basically is, right? Now, when you have your own startup where you are helping other companies to get involved in blockchain, have you faced a certain type of challenge when you're bringing traditional companies into blockchain?
First of all, I wouldn't say that anyone knows enough. Challenges regarding Web2. Yeah, I think it's the understanding of the cultural shift itself, right? That's what I think even for Web3 developers is sometimes hard. I think in general for everyone, when just starting out, is a little bit hard to understand, right? People are thinking differently. They have different priorities. Also within the Web3 space, right? There's the Bitcoin community, there's the Ethereum community, and then there are layer twos, right? There's Polygon, rollups, and everything, and everyone NFT communities, and everyone really thinks different and has some tiny nuances of each other. I think understanding that as a company can be challenging, and also the fact that what I also discovered is basically it's super hard to find talent, Web3 talent, right? Either they have a company, right, or they already are employed somewhere, or they are super, super expensive, right? Because they already made it somehow with their crypto investments. And right? Then it's hard to pay them. So most of the time, you have to convince them that educating your existing employees to become Web3 developers, marketers, whatsoever, is the actual way to go right now, at least. And that it's probably going to be cheaper that way.
Yeah, that's true. But in terms of talent, Kevin, so this might be a platform where there will be a lot of people, let's say mostly from, the South Asian, part of the world, maybe watching this later on. So if there's anything that you want to say to that talent existing over there, we have a really big developer community. People are looking for jobs, looking for remote jobs, Web3 jobs. What would you like to say to them?
One thing that I hear from clients all the time is communication.
Right.
Right. And trust. Those two things. Right. I'm not sure. Also, if you're serious about your project on one thing, I don't think a company would ever engage or really most of the time with
Yep.
anonymous developers, right? That's the first thing. So basically build trust around your personal brand, maybe. Be on LinkedIn, have a Twitter profile, be active, engage with people. That creates trust around you as a person. And more importantly, communication. Because what I hear all the time is people don't understand many developers, right? They either have a super strong accent,
Yep.
which I think I have to some extent as well. I'm working on that. Or they overcomplicate their speech, right? It's hard
I
for
would
them
agree with
to,
that part, with the second
yeah,
part more than the first one, because I think it really comes down to, how you talk. Like, for example, in the marketing world where I'm from, I have seen that so many people sometimes just talk in a language which is just full of jargons, and sometimes people wouldn't understand that. I think similar complications lie on the web development side as well, where sometimes people are talking in terms where it just gets too much to even understand. And like you mentioned, like in any company, there are different departments, but they need to work together. So in
yeah,
order to communicate those goals and communicate the results or whatever ideas you have, you need to be able to talk to each other in the language that they understand. So it's a really good point that you mentioned. Thank you for saying that. Yep.
yeah, 100%. Just imagine the customer, client, whoever
Exactly.
tells you something they want, right? And either you don't understand it or they don't understand what you suggest them, right? Both is a huge issue and leads to, yeah, much more expenses on the client side, which isn't desirable. And that's a problem,
Very
right?
true.
There's a saying for that as well, right? If you have to cover up your argumentation with complex jargon, as you said it, then most of the time it's because the lack of deep knowledge, right? The simpler
Very
your speech
true.
is,
Yep.
the more you actually understand something. Usually, right? Not always, but it's a good indicator for that.
That is really, really cool that you mentioned that. So whenever I'm speaking to, people in the Web3, there are certain terms that come up, So I recently spoke to another member of the community as well, and she's super involved in, building and representing the women in the space. She's from France, she's an artist, and we were just talking about the basic, again, terminology. With you, I would really want to understand, because on your profile and in your website as well, I see terms like DeFi, TradFi. TradFi was the first time that I've seen it in my life. So I would really want to understand, like, if you can maybe explain those, but in, simpler language.
Yeah, sure. TradFi, I've seen it differently on different places as well. Some write it with an D, right? TradFi, and some with
Right. Okay.
TradFi. But in general, it's just regular finance. Like,
Okay.
sorry, like everything you see from day to day, banking systems, everything, right?
Cool.
It's just
Even
the
they got a
current
cool
state
name
of the
in this
art.
world.
It's
Was not
traditional
expecting
finance.
that.
It's just an abbreviation.
Yeah. But it's a cool abbreviation though. Nice.
Yeah,
And the DeFi would be decentralized finance, but if you can also,
exactly.
simplify that term, like
Mhm.
what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, in general, decentralized finance is nothing else on a high level than you don't have to trust an institution, right? There's no intermediary, there's no bank or something like that that actually, for example, has your money or explicitly offers you certain rates where you can buy Ethereum, Bitcoin, for example, for your dollars, something like that. It's developed with so-called smart contracts, which is code on the blockchain, right? So basically, these rules, because smart contracts are nothing else than programmable rules that you have to follow if you engage with that blockchain code, you can interact with the finance sector in a more trustless way, right? You don't have to trust anyone
Nice.
except the code.
Yep. Important to mention. But yeah, Kevin, one or two maybe last questions. from my side would be, your goals have obviously shifted from a 13-year-old who started coding, and then you know, followed the traditional footsteps as well. Let's say you graduated, started working on your projects, and then you dived straight into a completely new world of Web3. So I would really want to understand, how have your goals shifted from, you know, your teens, 20s? Sorry, how old are you now?
25.
Oh my God, this is perfect.
What did you think?
Just a little bit older. I thought maybe 28, 29.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Okay, yeah, then I would love to know, like, what are your goals in your 20s? And what do you want to achieve as a person?
Yep, that's an awesome question, basically, because they really shifted a lot and oftentimes, which for the better and worse at the same time.
Yep.
I would say for a long, long time, I didn't really had some specific goal, but rather had the hunger to learn for I think, really long time. I think until the age of 19 or something like that, 18, I only had that, right? I only wanted to learn, to try out, to grow, right? There wasn't anything like I want to earn a lot of money. I didn't even was aware of too much of all that, right? And even when founding my own first startup, it was like, I want to grow that, to learn with that. And at some point of time, because the first startup I founded was a social tech startup, I really wanted to make an impact, right? I wanted to change the world, which is already a big mistake because you should always start with yourself, right? But I started with trying to change the
You have
world.
a bigger goal because, again, you break it down. Yes, it's good. It's good. It's good.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in general, the goal at that time was to help others, helping each other, right? To give incentives that people actually do something good, right? Be it monetary or some kind of. Yeah, and I would say that goal, that vision was super strong, probably the strongest I ever had in my whole life, which sounds crazy for a 25-year-old.
No, it's good.
But
Good. Good.
yeah, it basically was so strong that it was a really emotional one for me. I really, really, really believed that. And every time, yeah, I really think I was like blinded by that in some kind of sense as well. Which was one of the reasons why it really was a social startup and had a hard time to actually commercialize it in some kind of sense, because either we were too commercialized, right? If we tried it hard, or we were too social for many things, investors and everything, and that led to a lot of problems, right?
I have one question on that, though, Kevin.
Sure.
There's one quote that you mentioned, which is your favorite quote. And now that I'm, you know, getting to know the actual Kevin, I would really want to understand what does this actually mean to you when you say that your favorite quote is "Life just has to be meaningful enough to justify its suffering" by Jordan Peterson. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's great. So in general, I just want to say I like many things Jordan Peterson says, but I know that many people don't like him because some some things he's saying. I want to distance myself from all that political stuff out there. But in general, the saying itself had actually really huge impact on me at that time. I heard it the first time, basically, because I know everyone goes through many things, right? Everyone has problems, everyone has issues. That victim trap is really bad. You should never be in that. From my perspective for myself, I had some things to deal with, like I got how to say it in English, I got mobbed. Is that English? Like, yeah.
Yep.
Got mobbed in school. I got excluded in many kind of things. I got a daughter at a very early age, like 18 years old, which was great. Is great now, right? But was super hard on me at that time, especially because I got mobbed at that time as well. So it was a lot of things coming up. Basically, I had no perspective on life, got into a huge depression and everything, and really was, I would say, on the edge. One day, I actually was close to actually die with a car accident. How to put it, we were on the mountain. It was an open car, and we rolled down, right? We were a little bit too fast. I even had the camera, also I was not the driver, for context. I had the camera in my hand, even filmed that. And in the curve, right? We fell down and we survived it, right? There was like a small tree or something like that, which saved us. And that was the first time for many years I actually wanted to live because I didn't want to die. And that was the moment when I actually discovered I overcame my depression at that time. There was a process before that for sure. And that actually was, so this quote basically meant a lot to me in that regard, right? You always will undergo a lot of suffering. There will always be many things, right, that aren't pleasing, some kind of sense, right? It's normal. People die, illness, things don't work out as you want, right? Everyone has that. And in general, life can be so awesome, right? You just have to understand that it isn't always that way. You just have to keep perspective that that suffering that you might go through right now is temporary, right? You can get out of that and really make something great for yourself and for others, right? After you did that. And that's awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kevin. Honestly, I was not expecting this, but I'm so glad that you shared that, because again, it puts like more of a human aspect and human perspective to this whole thing that we just talked about before. Because experiences and labels and Web3, Web2, and da-da-da-da-da, we sometimes forget the human aspect, right? And I'm really glad that you brought that to this. And thank you so much again for sharing that.
Thank you for asking, right? Or in some kind of sense, maybe overshared, but yeah.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm actually really, again, there is never oversharing. It's always about what you feel right, what you feel in the moment, and then you just say it. There is never no regrets, nothing like that. It's all good.
No worries.
But yeah, one last question from my side would be, since you are a 25-year-old who has gone through some major life changes and experiences professionally and personally, what do you think are like the main things that people should invest their time, money, and energy in as someone in their 20s, let's say?
Try things, and your time is best invested in something that you actually are passionate of, right? If you don't know what it is, try it, right? Try certain things. It doesn't need to be Web3, right? Many people claim that's the solution for everything right now. It isn't, right? It's a huge industry. It will explode 100%. But if you don't like it, don't do it, right? Just because everyone is rushing in, doesn't mean you should as well, right? But if you like it, if you're passionate about any of these kind of topics, then sure, spend your time, maybe your money, and yeah, whatever other resources you have on that, and try it out. And if you don't like it anymore at some point of time, don't be too proud to step away from it again. Try something else. That's something I learned for myself. And I think that's really powerful, actually, to not be scared what other people think, to actually pursue what makes you fulfilled, right? Happiness is a temporary aspect, but actually being fulfilled, liking what you do in general, like your vision, purpose, and yeah, everything else, money, success in life, I think, or I hope, comes into place, like automatically, right?
Wow. No, I really love that, honestly. One of the reasons why I started this whole series was because, again, when we talk about investing, somehow it's only linked to money. But I think for me, it really matters that whatever it is that you invest, whether it's money, time, or your energy or resources, like you mentioned, you need to be very mindful about it. And that's exactly been the whole, like the theme of what we've talked about as well. So thank you so, so much for, giving your time and for sharing your experiences. Honestly, I am 110% sure that someone out there will definitely try one thing or another only because if they're listening to you. So thank you so much.
Wow. I say thank you, and thank you everyone for listening to this. Really a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thanks.